Pleasure to welcome to studio Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and the former IDF International Spokesperson, and our Senior Middle East Correspondent, Ariel Oseran. Thank you both so much. There is so much on the go. It feels like potentially the region is on the precipice of something. The regime at its weakest, reportedly since 1979. We're hearing about these aircraft carriers in position, as Mike outlined it, and the supreme leader reportedly is in a bunker, setting the chips in place for what exactly, Jonathan?
Well, good evening, Benita. I think what we're seeing is that most of the military assets that need to be in place for the US to be able to take meaningful action against Iran are indeed in place. You spoke about the aircraft carrier group, but additional electronic warfare and communications planes are already in CENTCOM's area of operations, and they are gearing. They also signaled CENTCOM that today they're going to conduct, I believe it's a 3-day exercise in order to project force, which could be a ruse or it could be just preparations for the real deal. But it basically boils down to decision by the president when to strike and if to strike. I believe that the Iranian regime has done too much slaughtering, too much killing, and has been spiteful and disrespectful of the American president in such a way that makes it impossible for him to do what President Obama did many years ago, draw a red line and then allow that line to get crossed without any consequences. So I think that the days of the Iranian regime are numbered. Difficult to say when it will happen and how it will happen, but I think that the Iranians look quite desperate. We see a lot of posturing on one hand, showing videos of missiles and arsenals and a lot of strong rhetoric coming out, but then on the other hand, actually begging for diplomatic talks and for something to delay the anticipated American onslaught. So definitely a lot to look into. Maybe a word in about the current situation that is unfolding in Syria. Another ethnic minority being left to be slaughtered, for lack of a better word, the Kurds, at the behest of the Syrian regime. That's happening as well as we're speaking. The Turks and the Syrians have teamed up against them. And in Israel, to make things even more complex, ready for Iranian attacks, but of course looking at the situation in Gaza, and I don't know if we want to get into the situation in Gaza, if we will have time to it, but really looking at how complex that is and how far we are from where we need to be in terms of the day after in Gaza.
A developing situation unfolding as we speak. Briefly, your assessment, your thoughts on the developments we're hearing right now.
Well, I hope that I'm wrong and that it isn't something very serious. I know that there are various organizations, Muslim Brotherhood, that are active in southern Jordan, various small cells of ISIS that are also active there. It could be a variety, and it could also be work seekers, even though Faran, the southern Arava area, is not an area that is frequented by work seekers. We see that in usually north of the Dead Sea. That isn't the situation here. So it could be something relatively serious. And we have to be honest, it is one of the least defended areas in terms of our borders, is where we have the least amount of available troops and assets. So it's a soft area. Hopefully, Israeli troops will get their hands on the infiltrators quickly enough without any more developments.
Obviously, a developing situation, and we will be tracking the latest and bringing it to you as it unfolds. Gentlemen, stay with us. We've got much more to discuss, and one can only imagine what this all feels like for the family of Ran Givili, and the entire nation feels like family of Ran Givili too. And to that point, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, the magnitude of this moment. There were so many who never imagined that all the hostages would come home living, or those murdered in captivity. And now that moment has arrived. It has changed the whole trajectory of this war. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are tremendous gratitude to the IDF, the soldiers and commanders on the ground, for sticking through it and applying the military pressure and fighting and getting the last body of the last murdered Israeli home. But I have to say that I don't think it would have happened without President Trump and his very talented team of negotiators. And you'll hear me say many negative things about Qatar and Turkey, but I think they had an important positive role in this. And you say very correctly, this changes the trajectory. I think it's pretty clear. Moving forward, the situation in Gaza is not going to be solved because the global community is allowing Hamas to continue to exist and nobody's disarming Hamas. Since Hamas is not being disarmed, that means that we will have to fight there in the future because they will try to attack Israel again. In my mind, it's only a matter of when. Why is it so important that there are no longer any Israeli hostages left in Gaza? It is important for us as a nation, of course, at the spiritual, the moral level, but also tactically and militarily, because if and when the IDF will need to go back to fighting, those tunnels where Israeli hostages were kept for more than 2 years will no longer be safe spaces for Hamas. And the fact that all of the Israeli hostages are back and that there isn't the threat of inadvertently killing Israeli hostages kept by Hamas is a game changer that I think Hamas fears and is an important part of the consideration. I hope that we won't reach a stage where we'll have to go back to fighting, but judging by the way the Board of Peace and no international stabilization force, how that's coming, I think that is where the situation is leading us.
To that exact point, what concerns you most about this Board of Peace? Apparently more countries are coming on board, but so far, from what we know, what worries you the most?
One is the lack of democracies. A few very important Western democracies have snubbed the invitation, citing loyalty towards the established rules and the UN governed system. That's one. Two, actors that are very hostile to Israel. Turkey and Qatar are there, which unfortunately isn't good for Israel. They are not honest brokers. And they are promoters of the Muslim Brotherhood and allies, strategic allies of Hamas. As long as they have strategic say, I think it's safe to say that Hamas will not be dismantled or disarmed. And that means that there will be a sequel to the horrible war that we've just endured. Third, I think it lacks structure. It's unclear what exactly the Board of Peace is supposed to deliver. I understand I think I understand what President Trump is trying to do by presenting an alternative to the UN. But at the end of the day, without global consensus and, very importantly, Western democracies being a leading part of it, I don't know how successful it will be. And again, bottom line, reality on the ground, no international stabilization force. Hamas is not being forced to disarm. And those are the basic conditions for us to be able to move forward into any different future that doesn't include war and terror and fighting. Those are the conditions. And currently, they are not met.
Over and above everything you are outlining, staggering reports suggesting Hamas is seeking a role for 10,000 police officers in Gaza. To imagine for 1 second, after what happened on the 7th of October and beyond, that this could be part of the plan for the day after, surely this isn't a viable option.
It isn't, but it is being promoted with the support of Qatar and Turkey. And if they have their way, that is what we will see. We will see Hamas operatives in police uniform. They will continue to do what they have done for the last 18 years, which is to oppress the Gaza Strip, its population, and continue to control that area and drive it further down into the abyss of misery and war.
And Jonathan Conricus, Lieutenant Colonel in the reserves, he touched on so many issues. Your takeaways on Gaza and Iran specifically?
1 down, 2 to go. 1 war goal accomplished out of the 3. It was the last goal that the Israeli cabinet added to the original 2. The first original 2 were, of course, in the family of complete and total victory. Defeat Hamas militarily and unseat them from power in Gaza. Now we are speaking about disarming and dismantling Hamas and getting rid of them from the Gaza Strip and controlling. That has not yet happened. One could hope that it will indeed happen, as Israel has been able to achieve a very, very important milestone, and that is to get all of our hostages back. And I hope that the Prime Minister and Israel will succeed in doing so. Regarding Iran, keeping it, I think, relatively low, just the bare minimum of defensive and offensive messaging from the Prime Minister, which I think was interesting. And regarding the remarks made by the Prime Minister and by Brigadier General Hirsch, one audience and one group of people is sorely missed, and they listed a long list of people that contributed. I would credit a global jury, Jews around the world who have come together and who have made it, such tremendous political pressure on international governments to get the hostages back, and they should have been mentioned as well.